week I said that, you know, because what's of interest is the archetypal nature. Last week we talked about the lovers, and it could be the lovers or it could just be someone's interesting archetypal type of experience. But if anybody has, you know, something that would relate to the lovers they'd like to relate or an archetype that they'd like to relate, go ahead and speak up. Otherwise, I'll go ahead and do the next one. Does anyone have one? Angelique, I see a smile on your face. Do you have one? Nope. Should I go ahead? Okay. But keep this in mind, because...
Yes, Greg, can I ask you something? Gary, sorry, Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was just wondering, because usually these lovers archetypes have sad stories to them. And you know, one is even more beautifully sad than the other. You know, there's different beauties in sadness, you know. And then, I'm coming again back to France and the Grail story, and which I'm now kind of fascinated by. And now they're saying with the story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, that seems to be the first one that's positive. At least that seems to have a happy ending, where usually with bad endings. Have you come across that?
Wow. Okay, so I'm going to refer this either over to Angelique or Craig, because I think they have a better depth knowledge of this.
Angelique, did you have any comments on it?
Well, I think I may. I don't know if that would answer, Annette, but I think one thing I could relate is that through my own research on the mysteries of Eleusis, I have come up, you know, these Orphic, some Orphic hymns. And the story of Orpheus and the myths around Orpheus, at least the latest ones, they speak of him having lost Eurydice, his beloved, to death. And then Orpheus, it seems that with his music, he was able to revive or to bring animals back from life, or to gather animals around him, to have his music in order to tame wild beasts. But
I remember that. Yeah, beautiful.
Yes, yes, and having to go, so because he wanted to bring Eurydice back, he had to go to the underworld, and it seems that he was asked not to look back. Persephone had agreed that she would allow him to bring Eurydice back. And under one condition, he wouldn't turn his head to look back, and that just have the trust that she would follow him. The story goes that he never got her back because he couldn't really help himself when he had a look. So that was an unrequited
sadness, sad endings. Yes, very beautiful.
And use of these sad stories, but
beautiful. Though.
Some researchers, Angela Voss is one of them, reports that earlier myths, earlier versions of this myth have they become fruitful and they have a very lovely result, and Orpheus actually brings her back. And the big question is, so the big question is, what makes Orpheus successful in the older hymns to find his own soul? Because with Eurydice, this is an allegory. We talk about his anima. So why in earlier myths, Orpheus manages to bring her back, and why he doesn't as the eons go by? And similar, the Persephone and Hades myth, because the earlier, more matriarchal versions of the Homeric hymn to Demeter, Persephone never got raped. It was a loving affair. Persephone every year was going down in her own resolve.
Wow, yeah.
She was doing it in the matriarchal versions.
Yes.
She was doing it willingly.
Well, isn't that a huge
And she
difference?
was,
Isn't that a huge difference?
I think it's again part of what interests me, what fascinates me. It's the evolution of an archetypal image through the eons. So
Yes.
initially, the connection between her lover, Persephone's lover, and Persephone's mother, there was no conflict in between. We talk about matriarchal societies. So she would willingly, there was no conflict played up there, archetypal or personal, or in the divinities representing the archetypes. And it seems that through the eons, a rape was needed in order for the, matrimonial union of these two different, two opposing as the eons evolved.
And I have a theory about that. It looks like that the male and the female are more distant from each other. So the more distance there's between each other, the bigger the conflict is needed to reunite.
I feel the same. And also, I guess, what does that say to us about Eros and Logos?
Yeah.
In the archetypal interpretation, in people's hearts through the eons, in the way we tend to perceive, to project in those archetypes. How do we receive these images and how they transform? So initially Persephone goes down happily and meets Hades, and Hades is not a conflictual power to Demeter's power, but then slowly that starts to be a big chasm of the two worlds. Similar with Orpheus. I think Orpheus, I have managed to find a version again, which might give a little bit of a light between Orpheus who succeeds finding his soul and Orpheus who constantly manages every time to lose her. And it's, I think it's Diodorus Siculus who says that Orpheus has denied to be dismembered in the underworld. That is why the Maenads, that's Dionysus priestesses, the Maenads had to dismember him in 1,000,000 pieces. And only if he was dismembered, he would be able to find Eurydice. That's what he says. And I found that amazing. So it seems that Orpheus proves not capable of finding his anima. It's a numinous meeting. Because he is not willing, as Craig would say, he is not willing to self in order to be reunited, but does not want to self-sacrifice and lose himself, lose his ego consciousness in order to meet his higher self.
Yes,
that's very interesting.
Doesn't seem to me, and that I find fascinating, but maybe I'm taking off too much time. I don't know.
Okay. No, that was great. This is kind of what I was hoping for.
Angelique, I have a question. So was the older times, was it a matriarchal society versus a patriarchal society?
It seems so, yes. It is likely so. I think Marija Gimbutas is the main researcher of the matriarchal times of both Minoan civilization and ancient Greek civilization, as well as Eastern Europe. But she has been, quite a few of her theories have been, there's a great dispute between the matriarchal times and the patriarchal. But I think it's fascinating for one doing my research to see how the archetypal images through the eons are transforming, because the matriarchal society was projecting a feminine god, whereas the patriarchal society, with the shift, we are looking into archetypal images that represent the Godhead with a masculine form. And it is quite interesting to see how these images change, how, for example, you know, from rural Eleusis and Demeter, we arrive to the 5th century BC Athena, wisdom and warlike, and born from her father's head. So there is a transition of the archetypal images through humanity. We change the way we look at the archetypes, and then the archetypes, as Jung says, transform through the way we look at them. It's a mutual, interrelated process. We affect them and they affect us. So I guess the archetypal images that we form of the archetypes might define, you know, might influence the way humanity goes, might influence the way the world goes. But that's a pure hypothesis in my own research. But yes, to answer to your question, I think it's very hard. Lots and lots of arguments and lots of ink has been used on this dispute whether the matriarchal families are, you know, matriarchal societies, when they finished or if they existed, and what happened and how the transition was. And there's a lot of debate. It's really hard to get into that debate, and many researchers, you know, seem to fight quite strong Marija Gimbuta's findings, and then Marija Gimbuta's students answer back, and it's an endless sort of thing, very difficult to prove.
Great. Well, thank you, Angelique. Craig, I'm going to turn it over to you because I think we've used up our archetype time.
That's fine. Well, we can do the lover the next time. But thank you so much, Angelique. It's always a pleasure to hear, you know, your scholarship. Well, anyway, good morning, everyone. And we're going to, today, we're going to start a new book called The Living Symbol, which goes through 10 months of analysis of one of Gerhard Adler's patients. You know, Gerhard Adler was born in 1904 and died in 1988, which is almost exactly the same years as Joseph Campbell. It was, he's about, got almost the exact same years. And Adler was a, you know, a analysand twice a week for at least 4 years with Jung, and 2 times a week with Tony Wolff. And he, there were very few people who learned from Jung directly. You know, there was Emma Jung, Tony Wolff, Carrie Baines, and Aniela Yaffe, Marie-Louise von Franz, you know, but Gerhard Adler was one of them. He later went to London, and then he became the head of the Jung Society there, along with Michael Fordham, who he later had a falling out with. But he is very unsung, and I think you're going to find in the book, The Living Symbol. Here's what we're going to really see. First of all, we're going to go through a progression of an analysis where there really is a progression. And the reason there is a progression is because of each dream and vision and painting that are considered a moral obligation went on his patient. And she followed up with it. And we're going to go through of just the absolute, what it means to follow the path of the dreams, you know, to follow the path of the dreams. And we're going to really find that out very early in this thing. I'll just show you what it means. I'll just show you a couple of pictures of Gerhard Adler. This is, let's see, yeah, there we go. There we go. I don't know what's going on here. Oh, I'm in the wrong thing. Here we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, here is Adler. Here, you know, and he was a great friend of Erich Neumann, too. I mean, they were actually were partners somewhat, and their family is Julia Neumann and Gerhard Adler's wife were very close. And then there is also, let's see, this is the book we're reading right now. It's called The Living Symbol. So if you've got, now this is a very important book for anyone who really wants to know. You know, it's one thing just to be a very conceptual, and it's another thing, you know, I always say, are we going to just read the cookbook, or are we going to actually cook food? You know, and the idea here is learning to cook food. Well, now the woman that he is analyzing was born in 1888. So she actually was born the same year that Tony Wolfe was, and is so then about 16 years older than Gerhard Adler. And it was when she was, he began with her when she was 49 years old. So that was, would have been like 1937 or something like that. She suffered from claustrophobia. Okay, you know, the fear of enclosed spaces. We'll find out later, you know, often this has to do with the mother, and it has to do with if you leave the womb too early. Now this came from the Puer Aeternus. If you leave the womb too early, you tend to suffer from agoraphobia, you know, the fear of open spaces. But if you leave the womb too late, you tend to suffer from claustrophobia, which is a fear of enclosed spaces. Just quick biography. She came from a scholarly family, not of great wealth, but of a cultural background. Her father came from Cornwall, so you know, that was where Penzance is. You know, it's in the southwestern part of the British Isles. And then her mother came from Kent, which is in the southeast part where Canterbury is. And her father was a high school teacher, interest in music. He was 34 when she was born. Her mother was 37, and he died of cancer at 62 when she was 28. He was introverted, gentle, rather melancholy, intellectual, artistic, but with a retiring disposition, but far from lacking in personality. But he was overshadowed by the more dominating personality of the mother. And for some strange reason, the mother, who does not seem that horrible, was the patient had a very difficult time relating to her. Because I don't know, just here's some facts about her. She possessed immense vitality, was warm-hearted and emotional, but she was almost too filled with life. And although loving and remarkably understanding, she was overwhelming. She died when the patient was 26. And from the start, she found it difficult to understand the relationship to her mother. Now, this is an interesting that she was unconscious of the complications and implications from this inability to relate to her mother. She had great insight into the personality of her mother, but she had hardly no consciousness whatever into the effect the mother had on her. So that was just this blind spot. The mother problem has a crucial role in her development. And it really isn't the mother problem. It is the problem of the feminine and the maternal. And also, you know, often, the animus, we're going to find out this later, her animus has a bad relationship with the feminine. So does she, you know, so that her father had a bad relationship to the feminine. So does she, you know, it's sort of this inner and outer, the masculine in the outer world and the masculine in the inner world had difficulty relating to the feminine. So, but the mother becomes very important later, at least the maternal aspect. Now she had, the parents were very loving. They were deeply attracted to each other. There were 4 children, sister 5 years older than her, who was timid and hesitant, didn't want to embark on anything, remained single, and died at 68 when she was 63. Very reserved, unable to discuss anything touching even remotely on emotions or feelings. Now, this goes through the whole family, this inability to cope with the emotional. The brother, older brother, was 4 years older, very introverted, gentle and intelligent, but lacked in vitality. He was overshadowed by the others, although he had a successful life in the traditional social pattern. Now, the younger brother, who was 1.5 years younger, was nearest to her in age, feeling. They had a very close relationship. He's the best mind in the family, very intellectual, gifted, very close to the father, which was a problem in his type. He's introverted, sensitive, artistic, with a vein of mysticism, and had an exploring, widely ranging mind. But he was helpless in emotional situations. And he seemed to be, now this is the problem of the puer aeternus. I mean, those who are helpless in intimate emotional relationships. And she had that problem as well. And by the way, you know, I was a puer aeternus. That was an issue I had. So now she was very physically striking. Her mother and her were both very beautiful, but she developed largely in reaction to the mother, not in concert with the mother like daughters often do. She did not seem on the surface like she was an extreme psychological type. She was not neurotic at all. So this is an existential analysis. It really is. That by nature, she's more of an introvert and had a satisfactory extroverted adjustment. Now, her chief function was thinking. Her auxiliary was sensation. So she's an extroverted thinking type, you know, and so intuition and particularly feeling were her inferior functions. And this is borne out by the analysis. So now her thinking and sensation were under great pressure as a young person because she needed to get scholarships to go to school, and she wanted to go to education. She did get education. She did brilliantly, studied modern languages, and but felt in later life the pressure had been too great, and her all-around development on the feminine side suffered greatly. And the parents were very ambitious for her to develop on the intellectual side. She joined the League of Nations in Geneva, you know, which formed after World War I. And she was there until the 1939 war. And she was very successful professionally and socially, but had a lack of self-confidence, which made her overdo things both in work and relationships. And by the way, in the analysis too, this is why we have this wonderful record, which is so detailed of the analysis, because she made such a wonderful transcription of it. But most marked was, however, her great shyness in the more intimate and emotional side of relationships. Okay, when I read that, I said, that's unusual. You know, I mean, I don't know, maybe some of you don't have shyness on the intimate side of relationships. She suffered from inferiority feelings about her attractiveness, but she was just absolutely gorgeous. You know, she did succeed in forming a lasting relationship with a man in Switzerland. He was extremely extroverted, full of feeling and emotion, uninhibited and spontaneous. And although he was dependent on women, so he was really had started the relationship with her because she was a mother figure for him. And that she chose such a partner and accepted her role as his mother, his surrogate mother, points to her own feminine problem and to the unconscious identification with the mother, the unconscious identification with the mother. And, so that is the relationship had definite limitations and problems, though she valued it highly. And a more conventional partner probably would not have been able to give her a sense of accepted femininity because of her problems with her own integration of the femininity, her feminine side. So this whole analysis is going to be about integrating in a thinking. This was Marion Woodman's problem. Her whole life is conscious femininity. She had probably the same description that we heard here was the description of Marion Woodman, and Marion Woodman had spent her whole life trying to become conscious of the feminine side, and in her case, it expressed itself in anorexia. This was sort of trying to be spiritual, but by being very thin, trying to get the body, sort of a rejection of the body side. In this woman's case, it was that the womb of the mother never left her. So she's feeling this fact that she's trapped inside a womb, even though she's living on the outside. That's sort of a very rough description. But anyway, so she came to analysis for the claustrophobia. She had very occasional attacks in her mid-30s. She came to analysis at 49. And they seem to have something to do with being in heights in the mountains. And they were so slight that she didn't pay much attention, but gradually they became more frequent and severe and occurring every few months until at age 44, which is an interesting age. Jung's near-death experience was on 4 of 44, and what was interesting was Jung at that time, let's see, in 44, he was 75. So he was 69 years old. So he had 3 23-year periods in that life. And then when he was given a new lease on life by the Basileus of Kos, who came to him, he lived another 23 years. So they gave him another third. It was just very interesting. I don't know. I don't have the things right because he lived till 61. So whatever the difference between 44 and 61 is, But anyway, she had these when she was staying in a high mountains, and at 44, she had a very severe attack that she could no longer overlook. She was in the Chamonix. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Perched on a mountain shelf, looking across at Mount Blanc. Staying in a hotel there. Here's a little picture of that. see here. Here, I think I'm kind of thinking this is the actual hotel, but I might be wrong. You know, but this the Mount Blanc or something in the background. But anyway, she had this seizure of this claustrophobic thing. In the middle of the night, she goes out on the steps, and she was in such acute distress. She spent the rest of the night sitting on the hotel steps, and then she fell into an uneasy sleep and had a dream. And we might let's see. She doesn't want to tell the dream, right? Or he doesn't want to tell them. After this attack, things went fairly well until at 47, and the outbreak of the war, she was forced to leave Switzerland and return to England. So in this, she felt she was a great loss because she had so many relationships there, and both with people and with her work. And so the loss of this pattern, the breaking up of her temenos there, her little magic circle, where she felt safe and adopted, was a strong precipitating factor in the final intensification of the symptoms, where they became not physical anymore, but became mental. And on the strength of her training and expertise, she found a job in England, but the attacks became more frequent and violent, and she seemed to be a change in their nature and intensity, and claustrophobia was no longer an adequate description for them. It was this acute anxiety, and it seemed to be connected with a distressing, incomprehensible intuition of the nature of the world. Now, this is typical of the sensate, okay? You know, the sensate's intuition always has a sort of a demonic, unrealistic aspect to it. You know, a sensate's intuition is often focused on the fact that everybody's conspiring against me. You know, so instead of the intuitive using it as normally, what is an intuitive expert on? On the world of the gods. They seem to have an inborn ability to connect with the images of the depths, where a sensate's intuition, as being the inferior function, their intuition is not of the world of the depths and the inner world. It is with the outer world, especially if you're extroverted. You know, who in the outer world. Now, if she's an extroverted thinking, her inferior function is introverted intuition. So now she thinks that the inner world is conspiring against her. You know, so there's this great fear of the unconscious in her as an extroverted sensate person. You know, so she all that could be said now. This is what she said. All that she could say about her fear is that it was full of darkness and emptiness, and there was no possibility of establishing any relationship with it. Now, that is the description of an introverted intuition as being the inferior function. There's all that could be said for it was there was only darkness and emptiness, and no possibility of establishing any relationship with it. Now, it also coincided with the beginning of menopause, and because of this feeling, she gave this the name the Black Vision or the Wilderness. Now, we're going to go through that in the next chapter. But anyway, she she could not ignore it anymore. for the, it was an attack of anxiety lasting several days, and it did not cease with the daylight. So we're going to discuss the first 10 months of her analysis of a 5-year, 200 dreams, active imaginations, and she came 9 times a month. He says 12 times. This is a different age. Can you imagine going to analysis 12 times a month? You know, Tony Wolff went every day on Sundays with one male analyst and one female analyst, and that included holidays. She's a little crazy, you know, but it was a different age. Who could afford that, you know? She kept this wonderful record of it. She kept reviews of every. She sent Adler her written dreams, which were very well formed, usually accompanied with paintings, and so she was now this is true of Adler too. She was genuinely moved by the numinosity of the unconscious material. You know, that thing which evokes energy within us, numinosity. And the word means literally to the beckoning call. You know, there's this idea of that it speaks to us, you know, and she approached it with religious devotion. Now, this is the story of analysis. You know, Jung's definition of religion, he started it out with the same one that Joseph Campbell used, which was religio, which ligio is a ligament, and it means to connect two things together, to yoke them. So that's where the word yoga came from too, is to yoke two things together. And what are you connecting is the broken aspect of ourselves, which is separated from nature, which is the ego, and then nature, the Sophia, you know, the wisdom of nature, and that's the idea of what we're reconnecting with, you know, in the ancient primordial sense. And now then Jung said later, no, it's not religio. At one time he did say that. He said it was religere, and that means to give careful attention to. Now, this is the idea of alchemy and relentless memory, and of having the alchemical vessel to which we apply attention. And, you know, the anima says to us, do not judge me because I am dark and trapped in the mire. It's your lack of attention that makes me thus. You know, if we can apply our light to her, she will whiten, you know, and that's the idea of going from the negredo to the albedo, you know. So this, anyway, she had this religious devotion. She accepted the burden of analysis as an individual moral obligation. We're just discussing this. I have a friend who's trying, has a center that is trying to do this through psychedelics. Fine, you know, but is there the sense of moral obligation on these images? And are these images your own? Or are they some common images, common to all mankind? Or are they the images that come from your root and your seed, which is not the same as mine, you know? And the sense of moral object. So her devoted, responsible attitude contributed considerably to what we're going to find out is this 3-step progression. You know, and we're going to talk about that when we come to the 1, 2, and the 4. Her unconscious material had such inner logic and completeness. Her unconscious material had such inner logic and completeness that the dream process seemed to unfold of itself in such a remarkable pattern of constant and continuous integration and with intrinsic consistency. It amply compensated, this is Adler speaking, for the imperfection and perceptiveness and knowledge of any analyst. And he says this was even with the fact that Adler discussed her material with other seminar students. The dream was far more helpful to her than any interpretation he could give. And it illustrates the power of the psyche to realize itself. And this was what Erich Neumann called centroversion. You know, you got introversion, extroversion. He said there was something called centroversion, where the true and integrated individuality of a person emerges out of its unconscious prefiguration. So it's this innate born tendency of a whole to create a unity with its parts and to synthesize them in a unified system, by the way, which has nothing to do with your ego attitude. This is the whole idea, is the attitude of the depths is absolutely so foreign to what you value in the outer world, in the ego, in the willfulness of what you value. It has a completely different ethic or ethos. Well, let's just jump right into the dream of the rod. Oh, we're almost out of time. Well, let me just go through it real quick. We did maybe just till the top of the hour, you know, just to get started. You know, I think I went out too long. But it's the dream of the rod. While sitting on the steps outside the hotel, she dropped off into an uneasy sleep. And in the dream, she could see on an oval patch. I just don't want to finish without a bang. Okay, this is just to get us a little taste of what's coming. You know, now she has this dream of the rod. Okay, and it was on an oval patch of blackness, which shaded off vaguely a rod made of yellowish white metal, and at one end was the monogram of the figures 1, 2, and 4. Now you see, this almost looks like an egg, and it has little cilia around it. You notice that? You know, the things that paramecium use to move around. And it's no doubt about the figures or their order, and the rod was just lying there without movement, and there were no other objects or people in the dream, and she made a painting of it. Now, this is what she, in her uneasy sleep on the steps of that hotel, in a high place, which often, since it is high, far away from the mother, it almost often triggers this claustrophobic aspect in her, or any symptom that seems to be related to a bad relationship to either the feminine or the maternal. It seems to somehow be associated with high places sometimes. So now the dream was, they discussed first the black vision, and in the second session, they discussed this dream, played a decisive role in her life. She felt it was so uncompletely related to anything in her conscious life, she would have forgotten it, except there was a group of Jungian analysts at the hotel, and she discussed it with them. And Adler thinks the dream was even synchronistic to the fact that there were Jungian analysts at the hotel, okay? And then that she knew that they were there. And so that was another reason she had the dream. And then she goes and discusses it with the analysts. They tell her that she should read Jung's books. She read Jung's books, but there was nothing in there that helped her with her dream. But she knew that generally the themes and topics he was discussing were resonating as the solution for the dream, even though she didn't know what the dream meant. And neither did that analyst. She sought out a Jungian analyst when she came to Britain, and she first went to H.G. Baines, who was died young, but was Jung's greatest friend. And he had Adler work with her. And now, and now we're just talking about some of the associations she had with the dream. She thought it resembled a key and also a magic wand. And the link between a key and a magic wand are clear. And this is actually the link in all analysis is the formal aspects of the dream, interpreting them in that way. And the second aspect is the dynamic meaning of the dream, of the symbols. There's one level, we just discussed what the dream symbols mean. On the other is what is the dynamic message of this that needs to be integrated into outer life. Now, so she felt that the dream it had formulated her problem and in how to look for the solution. So gave her the key to the problem, and with the wand aspect, gave the object of help. Now, let's just quickly discuss the 1, 2, and 4, and then we'll go to discussion. And at least we got a little taste of the thing. She first thought that this had to do with the labyrinth, that Constantine had a vision where he saw this symbol, which I think Angelique could tell us what it means. It's the Chi Rho, is the first 2 letters of the word Christ, in Greek. Typically what we're probably more familiar with is the in re, which is the object of, means, this is the Latin, which means, Jesus of Nazareth, Rex, King of the Jews. Now in Greek, it's INBI, and because it's our old friend Basileus, the king of Kos, who, by the way, that's where Basilissa gets her name, in the fairy tale. So anyway, it's sort of these letters, and now it's combo. It was, but the configurations of 1, 2, 4. I just want to go into those really quickly. The idea of the 1, 2, and 4, and we'll flesh this out a little bit more later, but it also comes up in the Taoist sign of the 1, which is called the Wu Qi, and it is just this empty circle, okay? All right, and then that is what is called the non-beginning. Okay, it's the non-beginning. Okay, so that's the 1. Okay, and then the 2 is the aspect of let's see if we can get this. Yeah, here it shows it a little better. Okay, the 1 is the supreme mystery. Okay, then it breaks into 2. Okay. Light and dark. And then it breaks into 4, which is the Tai Chi. Okay, now this it happens everywhere. Here's a place it happens. Adam and Eve leaving paradise. So they go from 1 to 2, and then now they have to become a 4. Now, Jung has some just wonderful things to say about this aspect of the 1 to 2 to 4. It is a 3-step process, but leads to a quaternity. Okay. And the quaternity is feminine. 1 is is an odd number, so you would think it would be masculine. But like the prima materia, it's hermaphroditical. It is both Hermes and Aphrodite. You know, so it's a combined image of the male and the female, as the prima materia is. And then the 2 is feminine, and so is the 4. And the fact that 3 is missing means that that represents her outer life, which is too involved with the masculine 3. Okay. Now, you know, in the Trinity, what the idea of the Christian Trinity is perfect. And why is it perfect? Because it has no darkness in it. Okay. But is it complete? No, because it has no darkness in it. And so the only way that you can have completion is through the combination of the dark side. Now, what is the unconscious of the Trinity? You know, seems very conscious to me. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert on Christian theology, but I just wonder where the unconscious in the Trinity is. You know, and we're going to go over this much more deeply later, but the idea here is that the 1, 2, and 4 are the description of a mandala. Okay, so and let's just relate this to ourselves. You know, 1 is the dream that you have, the unconscious material. 2 is confronting it or just remembering it, you know. And then 4 is the dream and the dreamer unite. And this is the mandala. And the most important thing about the mandala is the center point, you know. And so now the next dream builds on this union of the dream and the dreamer uniting. But the goal, what is the goal? Jung says the goal is the journey. There is no goal. The goal is the journey. That gates of heaven never open. And so you go back and the next dream responds. So it's leading somewhere, you know. And I just wanted to finish with this one image, but we're getting a taste. Now let's also mention that it has to do with the unus mundus, but I wanted to just give a couple things. Now this is about the 1, 2, and the 4. You know, this is from the big fish dream in Ion. A gust of wind blew and set everything in motion. And then this is a dream. And then suddenly I heard the voice of Mr. X, this magician in her life. And he says quietly but distinctly, the patient ones in the innermost realm are given the fish, the food of the deep. And at this moment, a circle ran around me, part of it touching the water. And then I heard a voice again, the brave ones in the second realm. Now what happened in this dream, I should mention first, is she was there with the pages of her dreams, and they all blew into the water, you know, and then she catches a golden fish or something, you know, like that. And then, so the patient ones in the innermost realm are given the fish, the food of the deep. And that moment, a circle ran around me, part of it touching the water. And then I heard the voice again, the brave ones in the second realm may be given victory, for their battle is fought. And then another circle ran around me, this time touching the other bank. And at the same time, I saw in the distance the colorful landscape was revealed. But notice nothing is said about it. The sun rose over the horizon. I heard a voice speaking as if out of the distance. The third and the fourth realms come similarly enlarged out of the other 2. But the fourth realm, and here the voice paused for a moment as if deliberating. The fourth realm joins on to the first. It is the highest and the lowest at once. For the highest and the lowest come together, and they are at bottom 1. And here the dreamer awoke with a roaring in her ears. Now, this also is illustrated in this image here. Is the suspension of the ego at the center of a quaternity, you know, at the center of a mandala, really, that forms a mandala. And now we're going to hear some wonderful descriptions of what that means. I can't give it to you right now. It's just take too much time. But I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of hint. I think the other thing is there's also related to the unus mundus of alchemy. And that idea is basically, I mean, this is not a really good description of it, but it is where psyche and matter, Teilhard de Chardin, this French theologian who, wrote about the noosphere, said that matter was psyche slowed down enough so that we can see it, and we know too that matter is made up of energy. It's made up of really not, E equals MC squared. So what does M equal? M equals energy divided by C squared. It's so, energy, matter equals energy, or matter and energy are the same thing. Now, this also comes up to me, and it's just an image that I've been having in my own active imaginations lately, is that the composer of the dream is the same one who's the composer of bodies, Sophia. She's the sum total of all archetypal images, the wisdom of God. So all of our images come from that wisdom. Now, by the way, which Angelique mentioned, does not have a womb. It's on a spectrum. Over here, you have the devouring mother. In the middle, you've got the great mother, who's the mother of all, who has umbilical cords and a womb and gives birth to all. And then on the far end, you have Sophia, who's this image realm. And by the way, here we're just going to find out, that what is the way that the inner world communicates with us? What Jung said: when we die, where do we go? To a realm of images. How does the depth communicate with us? With narrative and images. That's what we're supposed to unite with. What else is there? You tell me. I don't know what else there is. So we're uniting with images. This is the language of a living psyche. And in every dream, I think everybody here's had one, where you're in a house and you don't know who owns it. It's the unknown house. Who owns this house? I'm living here. Maybe I'm here. I snuck in. I don't belong here. Who owns the house? You never find out. So it's the idea that Jung's first real revelation was, I'm not the master in my own house. Okay. Now, this master of the own house who you never see is a borderline concept. In other words, you never meet them, and everything they send you is unknown. But what they send you, and their only gift they can give you, are these images, which are that 1 is the image, 2 is you confronting the image, 4 is uniting with it. And that's the 3-step process that leads to a paternity, what Jung says, that there's 3 steps, 1, 2, and 4. And we'll go into this in much more deeply later. But anyway, we got a little bit of a flavor for the thing. Gary, I'm sorry that we didn't have much time to discuss, but Gary, why don't we see if we can get everybody's comments in the whole room, if we can.
Sure. Let's go ahead and go around. Well, I'm going to go the other way. Azin, do you want to make the first comment this time?
Yes, hello everybody. I was just thinking about this succession of numbers 1, 2, 3, and the Tao cosmology. And it's really interesting how it's parallel to Gebserian structures of consciousness, which is archaic, magical, mythical, mental, and integrative or integral. And archaic is what you said, what you call the non-beginning. So it's just like an unconscious state. It's like being an infant. You don't have much to say about it. And then in magical, he says there's a point. It's a single point, like the circle that you show. And it's interesting that within the magical realm, what happens is that there's this ocean, this liquid form, and then it starts to constellate. The same thing that we read in Vasilisa, the constellation. And then there's multiplication of this point. These points are similar, but there's multiplication, okay? It's like looking at the sky, all the stars that are there. And biologically, it's like mitosis, like cells that reproduce, but they are completely like each other, with just multiplication. And then in mythic structure, what happens is there's this thing, it is a recognition of the other. Othering happens. It's like two cells are getting apart and there's difference. It's like meiosis, all right? Difference. And what I'm working on right now are hybrid creatures, including centaurs. When I first studied this subject, I was thinking, oh, this is unity. This is about unity with the body. Now I see it from a Gebserian point of view, and it's about difference. It's the first time that a human look into his psyche and see an animal. This is the first civil man, because unless you're not civil, you don't see the animal, right? So this mythic process that is othering, it's starting to differentiate. And here in Tao cosmology, you show it as a circle, black and white, all right? But then we go to mental. Mental is separation. It's the severance of human mind from the body, from animal. So it's completely black and white, different, separation, dismemberment. And then the moment it becomes four, like you see the seeds of opposite force inside these two parts, I think the moment it happens, it starts to work in a spiral way, you know? And this is integral. This is integral, and I think 3 happens here. When you go through this spiral movement between 1 and 2, a new beginning, a new emergence may happen. So this is how I see it. And it's really incredible. I don't know if Gebser read this Tao cosmology, but this is also repeated in the 5 bodies that we have: physical, astral, mental, causal. So it's just the same pattern. And it's really interesting how This is the story of evolution, the story of consciousness, the story of interpreting a dream. It's fantastic.
Thank you, Azim. So,
Thank you, Azim.
but you said, to ask one more question on that, you said the magical would be like a point that just evolves, that goes through an evolution.
It's
so,
oneness. It's oneness. Like
oneness.
there's no inner and outer. You know what I mean? And it's
Right.
Gebser talks about it. It's about hearing. It's about receiving. And then something comes through you and you cast a spell. You say, abracadabra. You know, something comes through you and it manifests as magic. But the magic comes from oneness.
Right. Yeah, I really find that whole, dichotomy between the, the different levels really interesting. And, hopefully we'll hear more about how to separate that and how we can, maybe choose our own levels at different times. But thank you. Dan, would you like to go next? Are you there, Diane? I guess I'll go on to Eva.
Trying to unmute, I think. She's just, yeah, there she is.
Sorry, I had to get on my phone because I was attenuating so badly I couldn't. The whole picture stopped. So, well, the one thing that I find curious is that of all of the case studies of women, so and what you've been presenting, Craig, are about women who are not aligned with their feminine side. So, I'm wondering again if that is has been evolving because we have such a patriarchal society. And I see, all the patterns. I was thinking about when you showed that, I think that was a Dali, Salvador Dali portrait of Jesus. It was the fourth dimension. That is in the fourth dimension, which is time, and how that is became time space, and but the space is sort of like the one, the unity, and then the evolution through time goes back to the one again. So I'm seeing that pattern too, but I don't think I can articulate much more than that right now.
Yeah, interesting observation. Thanks. Eva?
Okay, I do not have something special to add to today's discussion, but my dream work, it's so important to be anchored in my own dreams, because I couldn't understand at all what we are reading if I didn't have this kind of. I had a magician in my dream yesterday, and it was apparently related to my other dreams, and I couldn't neglect it. It's so strong when it comes from the source within. Okay.
I just want to say, Eva, I thought about your dreams as I was reading this. I'll just say.
Camilla?
Well, from my memory, I got stuck with also the number the 1, 2, and the first bit made me think of the Fibonacci curve, because 1 + 2 goes to 3. But that is the missing one here. And then, of course, it doesn't follow that structure at all. But I was thinking, because 1 and 2 makes 3, and it's not appearing, and there are always these 3 steps, I thought that it sort of became the journey that was the number 3. So the moving through 1, 2 to 4, and I don't know where that sort of leaves us with consciousness and how it sort of, I'm still thinking about it, but I could just sort of feel the way that 3 was moving through the other numbers, or from 1 till 4. That's not very clear, I can hear that, but that was, yeah, that's where I am at the minute with this particular bit. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, getting a feeling for the numbers, I've always struggled with that, but that was good. Thank you. Charles.
It's really noisy where I am right now, so
yeah, I can hear the wind. So yeah, Susan.
Susan,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, there you
I'm
go.
sorry. I'm sorry. I'm having problems with this. Yeah, I'll just listen today. Really fascinating. Really happy to be here.
I want to welcome Susan too. I've been sort of talking with her, and
yeah, I've been watching you guys on YouTube. I feel like I know you all. You're all wonderful.
that always I have that happen too. I see something and I go there. They, wow, these guys are real.
Yeah. I guess I just one really quick question was a comment you made, Craig, about the intuitive, introverted intuitive being demonic, having a demonic aspect. Would the extroverted sensate function if it's the inferior also be the same?
Well, yeah, now that's an interesting question, because that's my inferior function, is extroverted sensate. Okay.
Mine too, yeah.
Have you ever, you should ask my wife, every time I try to fix something, every time I try to go somewhere, even in where I get lost, and then she says, I start throwing out F-bombs, I mean, which I don't normally do, so I don't know, but it's just that the fact we have an extroverted sensate daughter, and she thinks everybody's trying to get her. Everybody's in her environment everybody likes her a lot, but she feels they're conspiring against her. So her intuitive is working against her. I don't know. It's just interesting.
It's very interesting. Thank you.
Cap.
I haven't got too much really, but I was just struck by the first image Craig put up that shows the golden rod with the numbers. But the way it looked to me, it looked like in astrology, the glyph for Jupiter, that of the gods and this sort of divine gifts and sort of expansion and things like that. But the other part of the rod has a circle, and I couldn't help but think of like a bit, like on a bridle of a horse and things like that. So for me, it was like, well, this was, and we're reading the book. Obviously, it's a great journey for this woman, and it was really like the invitation of being invited to open up to bigger energies or whatever, bigger state of awareness. And obviously that was the product of obviously her book and it being shared with us. So no, I'm just like really can't wait to get to listen more, because I think it's going to be amazing. So can't wait for that.
No, I love that amplification of the symbol. I mean, what a great way to start it, Kat. Thank you. Angelique?
I know little about, I always thought, because of my study of Vajrayana Buddhism, that three and the representation of the triangles in the feminine goddesses of Vajrayana Buddhism was, you know, these double triangles, the one looking downwards and the other looking upwards, and then they meeting, forming this. And also, I'm reminded of Ibsen's triangles, and him saying, writing that they are extremely unstable forms, structures, that the triangle is an extremely unstable structure. And I remember him saying somewhere in an interview that this is the reason I am studying them in my theatrical writing. So had I not known that for Jung the four is the feminine, myself, I would intuitively feel that the three is what is missing in her very first dream in the monogram. So if this is the very first dream of an analysis showing what's the missing thing, that means that in a monogram where three should be there, because for a monogram, in order to be a true monogram, should have all the numbers till four, shouldn't it? So there seems to, I would think that had I not read Jung, I would think that what is indicating is that the three is not there. So then I would think that the feminine, the conscious integration of the feminine is missing. But then Jung has come saying four is the feminine, which always confuses me, as opposed to the Vajrayana triangles, and as opposed to Ibsen's triangles, and as opposed to what I would have thought the monogram is coming to say to the analyst and to the client for the start of an analysis. So I'm very confused because I don't know enough about the reason why Jung feels that four is the feminine and not three. So my intuition would always be three is the feminine, extremely unstable structure, constantly transforming, but then it's not. So I'm very intrigued for what is going to follow. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Would anyone like to comment on that?
Well, I know.
I would, and sorry, go ahead, Azim, go ahead.
I know that in animus studies, the female is shown with a circle, and male is shown with a triangle or a square, because it's about limitation and structures, and animal is about expansion. So that's what I know.
Great, thank you. Aline, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I was just, I was curious, like you, Angelique, I think four is the feminine because of, in the Christian mythology, three is so obviously masculine. And, you know, there is no room, as Craig said, for the darkness, no room for the dark side. And this makes it unwhole. And that's, to me, the image of femininity from prehistoric times of the great Earth Mother and all of this. It just seems like a solid four, whereas, you know, which has kind of a round and round kind of thing. But the three in a triangle, I was understood, Angelique, I've always understood that three is a very solid number. You know, it's, if you have, like in a marriage, you have two people, it's kind of unsteady until you have a child. And this, until you have three, and then it is more, it's stable. It is stable. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents worth. I'm enjoying the book. It's really challenging. But I feel that I will come to grips with the distinction, sorting the seeds of archetype, symbol, unconscious psyche, and on, all these great words that are in Adler. I'm enjoying it. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. John, you get the last word.
No, I just wanted to say thank you for letting me attend. I just am always humbled by the wisdom of the unconscious and the psyche. I mean, I just found you guys yesterday by finding the Puer Aeternus lectures. And now I start on a day when you're starting something new that brings a lot of personal stuff with it. And I'm a huge fan of Salvador Dali. So when I saw that Corpus Hypercubicus, I remember standing in front of that painting at the Metropolitan Museum and thinking, this means something, but I don't know what the hell it means, but it was personally meaningful for me. So it's just further confirmation that I'm in the right place. And I just have nothing to add. I just want to listen. So thank you very much for letting me attend.
Yeah, that feeling of awe when you stand in front of a painting like that. I mean, what a great experience. Thank you for your comment. Craig.
Yeah, well, we'll just, I'll just say, you know, that it's going to be I think we're going to learn about the structure of the psyche. We're going to learn about the, just what he calls the incredible inner logic in the dreams, and how they're leading somewhere, and who writes them and what purpose do they write them. I mean, we're going to find both the ontological and the teleological meaning of our own dreams, you know, where their source and where the dynamic significance of them, you know. So anyway, well, if there's, unless there is, anybody else have any comments before we
I guess I'll just make one comment.
Yeah, okay,
you know, and that is, you know, I'd actually read this book, you know, a few years back, but one of the things that, you know, that so impressed me was, you know, how seriously she took all this, and the you know, and the work she did, and the, you know, the active imaginations, and the, you know, she would paint it, you know, she kept track of all of it, and, you know, she did the work.
And this is the problem with the Puer Aeternus and the intuitive in general, okay, is that they understand everything conceptually, but there's fact that they are not sensate, it never becomes reality. You know, this is what von Franz said about the intuitive. They never reap the harvest. And you know, the only way they can reap the harvest is for their intuitive side, which thinks it knows it all, to crash against the rocks. Suddenly now they have to be a sensate. They have to find sensate in her. Now in here we're finding the sensate crashing against the rocks. The this feeling that that they are on the other side is a darkness and an emptiness, which there is impossible to have any relationship. Now, this is the extroverted sensate experiencing the years and years of the intuitive, of all these amazing revelations and visions. But as Gary said, they don't have a moral obligation. That's the same thing with the Puer Aeternus. Cannot act because their lack of obligation, that this puts a burden on me, I will not accept it. I am an eternal child. You know, I don't handle burdens. You handle burdens. You know, so it's this inability to take responsibility, which is consciousness. Okay, consciousness is accepting the responsibility. You know, if not now, when? If not me, who? You know, are we going to live a provisional, tangential life all of our days, or are we going to finally enter a symbolic history or something like that? Anyway, any other comments? Azine, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking about having the opportunity to work with the psychoanalyst, Jungian analyst. And it's so expensive. I mean, all through these years, I've been working on my dreams in this inner journey, but I really never had a chance to work with an Jungian analyst. And this Jungian schools are expensive. So the Jungian community in general is elite. And opportunities like having this dream, this group that we work together, we reflect on each other's dream. It's like a group analysis. It's really, really, I really, really appreciate it, because when you work in your inner world, you can be completely isolated, and at a certain point, you cannot even self-reflect. So it's important to have this collective presence, and I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'd like to say,
yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Please, Diane.
No, go ahead, Craig, and I'll say what I was going to say.
Oh,
you were
I was just going to say that that Jung never wanted a school founded, the Jung Institute. He was very against it, and because it was like the realization of the Buddha. His first realization after he woke up from sitting there 7 days was, this cannot be taught. Okay, yeah, so the idea was that the way Jung was going to develop analysts was through going through dreams with them. But anyway, Diane, I don't want to hold up.
Oh, I just wanted to add, I had some thoughts as everyone was talking about the three that's missing. I think the three is fundamental to everything, and geometry and trigonometry and the whole thing, but it's not necessarily that stable on its own. It needs other things added to it. I think of the pyramid, and that's 5 different triangles. And so I think it's fundamental, but it may not be, it can't stand alone. So, but it's part of the process. It's fundamental to the process. Like you said, Gary, Craig, that there's, it's a 3-step process. So it's there.
It leads to a quaternity.
Yes.
Jung said.
Yes. So that's just an observation.
Yeah, the 7, is and the fact that time is related to a past, present, future, yes. All that. My wife just say, she doesn't know anything about Jungian psychology, doesn't care, but she hates it when she's 51. She likes to be 52 or she likes to be 50. But she does not like to be 53, but she'll be okay with 54. There's that idea of the odd year. Somehow she feels ill at ease. So I don't know.
Well, I also wanted to say about the non-beginning that you talked about.
Yes,
it's also, what T.S. Eliot says in his poem. We always, the end is back to the beginning. So
we see it for the first time,
Yes.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. Well, anyway, we'll pick it up next time, and I think it's going to start to make a little more sense. I kind of rushed through it. I'm sorry, it's a little chaotic, but next time I hope it becomes a little more, we'll active as if these are our dreams, So anyway, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
We'll see you all next time. John and Suzanne, very nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.